Okay, I've been trying out the new stat distribution relic perks on different characters, and it's actually really good. Here, for some reason, I thought the lock-on would actually like make me move to them, but I guess Guardian's ult doesn't extend that far. Also, I discovered this by accident, but the golden shockwave, it heals an entire bar in a single cast. Granted, it takes a lot of mana, but like that's probably the quickest res I've ever done. It's actually crazy. And for the most part, you run into so many of those golden shockwave things on the starting seals, but I guess I was disregarding it as useless because it doesn't really do damage. However, for resing, it's phenomenal. So Guardian's relic perk that I have active is the one that reduces vigor, but it gives him more faith and mind. So that's why my mana bar is pretty high. The HP bar did take a hit, but I think it's big enough to the point where I can successfully survive one hit in depth 4. Though realistically in depth 4, I feel like the best perk ever is damage negation at full HP, followed by successive attacks negate damage if you're a melee player, and damage negation while casting spells if you're a caster. I feel like that's the perks to prioritize no matter what, unless you're gonna no hit, in which case it probably doesn't matter, but I feel like damage negation at full HP is actually the way. It makes you survive at least one shot. For the most part, everything does one shot you, especially if you're like a caster with low HP, and I feel like these stat change perks really alleviate that pressure of like getting one shot. Even though Guardian lost HP, I feel like it wasn't a substantial enough loss to where you shouldn't run it. Plus you get more faith, and then I also have the dormant power to help discover seals, and it's actually been really solid. One thing I wasn't running though, which I think I should start running, is the Maris Relic. I think that's the one that gives you a ton of HP and continuous HP recovery. I think that one's pretty solid. I had that on Dutchess, and if you take a look at level 15 Dutchess, level 15 Dutchess has more HP than a level 15 Guardian with the stat distribution changes. So it's pretty much caster Guardian, tank Dutchess, and tank Recluse, and they've all been phenomenal. I feel like it's a bit of luck here because I had Discs of Light and Great Heal, and we had Royal Revenant, and this thing just melts its HP. Every cast it just like shreds like crazy. The only downside is you have to rely on Starlight Charge if it's spells that consume like a shit ton of FP. The really solid ones that don't use a ton of FP in my opinion are Discs of Light obviously, but also Frenzied Flame, the regular incantation. That thing's actually really good on FP usage, and it does a shit ton of damage. The other incantations I really like are the Crucible Knight ones. Like there's a Horn one where you can charge and you do a Horn Slam. It does decent damage, and also it builds a ton of stagger. Also, I feel like, I don't know if it's me, but I've noticed that Guardian isn't the best at holding or gaining aggro. I don't know if it's just my experience in general or if it's like this for everyone else, but I've noticed on Guardian, unless you have that perk where like Guardian gives you aggro, you tend to like have the least aggro generated by default. Like all these bosses we were fighting, I was drawing the least aggro for no reason. So I don't know how that works exactly, but I've also noticed that like when I play Guardian, I struggle to maintain aggro. I know your ult can pull in enemy aggro, and I think your skill can too, but for the most part, anytime I play Guardian, the enemy tends to like switch aggro on and off a lot. But this time when I was playing caster Guardian, I noticed that I rarely took aggro, which made it really tough for my teammates, but it made it super easy for me to just stand back and constantly spam spells. And then this is a little tank Dutchess setup. So I have two relic perks. One of them reduces intelligence but gives me mind, and the other one gives me vigor but it reduces mind. And I think one of them also gives me faith. It's like 2 in total. And with those combinations, I have a ton of HP, and I think Dutchess scales better with incantations at this point. Although I could be wrong, they might be equal. But I've just been spamming incantations. This one I just picked up the Blood Flame aspect. I didn't get really lucky with my incantations, but this one's actually really solid in the amount of damage it does. And the best part with Dutchess is the fact that you can restage your damage, and it actually adds up quite a lot. Like this here is the Magma Worm fight. I was just spamming Blood Flame on the ground. Pretty much any incantation that you can spam on repeat with like low FP cost, in my opinion, is like really solid. But yeah, I feel like those things that Dormant Power helps discover thing is really solid because I was just getting seals left and right, and it's actually been so good. It's both good for Guardian and it's good for the setup for Dutchess. And like I said, Discs of Light in general, unless you're facing, I think Fulgur is the only one that's like wholly resistant, I think. So it's actually a really solid setup. The other really good thing about Duchess is her dodge. I'm not super familiar with every enemy's exact dodge timing, but like here, it was me and then both my teammates were down. I was pretty much dodging reactively because I don't really know the Nameless King's moveset all that well. And it seemed to have worked out only because Duchess dodge is phenomenally busted. And I pretty much just stalled the fight until I got my ult back and I cast it and then I rezzed my teammates. And yeah, I feel like this Civ Light is solid. It does decent damage, it's spammable, and it takes very little FP. And the other thing is, like I said, if you look at my HP bar, it's solid. I don't think I have damage negation at full HP, and even if I do, I'm not at full HP. And I'm able to survive the giant shockwave from the Nameless King, although if you look at how much damage it does, it's absolutely insane. I think this is depth 4. But yeah, having this kind of a setup really makes the fights a lot more comfortable in terms of survivability, because usually you can take a hit and you can survive and you can fast back up to full. Okay, and this is tank Recluse. I feel like she didn't get a whole lot of HP here, and I think that may be because I don't have the Mars Relic on her like I did on Dutchess. I feel like that makes a huge difference. I also have that Relic which gives you more HP on the number of, I think, churches or cathedrals that you defeat. But as far as like LFG goes, it's a hit or miss. Like a lot of times people completely avoid them and sometimes people do go for it. The only thing is I feel like Dutchess is better than Recluse, mainly because she can restage. However, Recluse can recover FP, which is like kind of good. And the other thing is, if you use the stat change relic on Dutchess to make her tanky, then you lose out on intelligence, and I think you scale better with fate. So, you know, it's a trade-off. You have to pick and choose your battles, I guess. But yeah, Shattering Crystal is just downright broken with the improved Crystallian sorceries. Even at depth 4, it's just shredding through bosses. And it's not even like we stack Everjill buffs, right? I think at most, you have like 1 or 2 Everjills done in general, like for the most part. And then this is a level 14 Recluse. If you look at my HP bar, it's pretty solid. Although I think if I had that Maris Relic that gives you extra HP and continuous HP recovery, it would have been a lot bigger. But yeah, this is what I've defaulted to now. Instead of using them normally, I'm using stat changes to give them vigor. They actually deal considerable damage and they're very tanky. Iron Eye is also very, very solid, mainly because of his mark. I feel like the best characters for Deep of Night difficulty, like the higher ones, it's gotta be Iron Eye, because the mark, when you explode it, it does a ton of damage and it staggers or like micro staggers the bosses. Recluse is another good option, although I feel like Dutchess might be better simply because of the restage thing. Or actually both of them are solid, it really depends. And then Guardian, I used to think he was bad mainly because he lacked DPS. I know you can guard and hold aggro, but from the Guardians that I've had in my games, I've noticed it's like very inconsistent. And I feel like it's just better to switch Guardian over to a caster and just go to town with casting spells. Executor is also solid because of the status effects. It chunks so much of the HP. Wilder, I don't know how good Wilder is. I tried Wilder quite a bit. Depth 3 Wilder was okay, but I feel like depth 4 the damage really starts falling off, and the same thing with Raider. I don't know how I feel about Raider either. I know you can stack a bunch of HP, but at the end of the day you're not really doing a whole lot of damage. And they gave him a relic perk where using his skill lowers the enemy's damage output. However, I don't know if this is a bug or if this is intended, but his skill stops staggering bosses and stuff if you have that relic perk equipped. So I don't know how I feel about that one. But yeah, I think having at least 1 Iron Eye and at least 1 caster kind of sets you up for success. The biggest issue that I've seen is survivability. People just getting one shot and random matchmaking. And this is like the only solution I've come up with, and it seems to be working fairly reliably.